Hey, yeah, man. Hey, listen. One thing about it, I know you missed the Pokemon guy, right? But I think now we old enough to visit one of the best political animes ever created. Gundam. Bro, you gotta get into Gundam. Like that story behind Gundam, that shit is literally all of the political shit we talk about. And it's crazy because as a kid, you would see it come on, like after like DBZ and all that shit. It'd be like, man, I can't watch this shit. But now, man, I'm telling you, one day
So
you
we
gotta check it out.
live. Yo,
Yo,
nah, you not in yet. Give me 1 second. So, for everybody who's not watching already, today we're going to be talking about black fatigue and the things that I am particularly tired of when it comes to black people and the things that we do, from this Dash Diddy and Cassie situation, from black bourgeoisie, hustle culture, and that's just to name a few. So before I get started, I'm gonna just go ahead and say, for everybody who is watching, this is not going to be a conversation about specifically Diddy and Cassie. Think about it in a way where Diddy and Cassie is going to be used to highlight and undergird a few of the conversations about the culture overall, and how we create these landscapes to get to these explosive situations that aren't good for either side or the whole community. I'm gonna also pull in some from, as you can see, the meritocracy trap. Let the camera pick that up. This is going to be a conversation that's going to add to and layer on top of, again, like I said, hustle culture and how people use sex, access, money, power, and all of these things to try to get ahead, because we believe in the falsehood of meritocracy in an environment where the actions, the outcomes don't actually align. So I wanted to bring in that to have a more political discussion and frame everything that I'm talking about. I'm also going to bring in a few things from this. This is You Will Own Nothing by Curl Roth. And again, this is just to frame the conversation and to make sure that we bring it back and continue to have a political discussion. I was going to bring in the color law, but I decided not to, only because I particularly couldn't figure out how to really frame or bring it into the discussion without having a completely different conversation, if you know what I mean. Because the color law talks about like covenants and how different environments, the physical, was put into place. But I will reference that text conceptually to speak to the piece that I'm talking about when it comes to being tired of how we have, black people going on this trend of talking about black fatigue, especially in a haphazard way that doesn't speak to it in its full context. So, without further ado, please hit the like button, hit the share button. I appreciate it. And so, first things first, the Cassie Diddy conversation. Now, I'm going to go real slow with this one because it's a touchy topic. It's a touchy situation. And I'm going to bring my man Quan in after I kind of set up the framing so we can have a discussion around it. But when we talk about sex, when we talk about money, power, and access, us as Black people have a very toxic relationship to those things. In part because we think that we have the same opportunities and access that white people do in the same way that they do, which is why you hear the Black people who are talking about Black fatigue using the narrative that people should be acting a certain way, Black respectability, or if we have the Michelles, if we have the Baracks, and we have all of these people at the Met Gala, why can't this subsection of people act like a certain group of people? The problem with that is because we don't necessarily have the same tools when it comes to matriculating through society. And not that we can't. But I wanted to bring the Diddy and Cassie conversation in is because, unfortunately, we do have a culture where we have embraced sexually explicit content and behavior as a means to further yourself. Now, Diddy is fucked up, and we gonna touch him. And I'm gonna go down a whole list of names of toxic Black males and people in general, but I'm gonna speak to it because as a community, we prop these people up and give them headway to allow them to be the predators at high levels. And why do I say that? Because Diddy was fucked up and has been fucked up. But in our community, and again, I'm a Black dude from Southeast Washington, D.C. I was raised in the hood. I was raised in environments where a lot of the things that media portray and push forth, which is the thing that people are quote unquote tired of, is also propagated by white institutions. And I'll bring in an Ice Cube clip to talk about that. But when it comes to Cassie and these situations where we have women who are being put in dangerous situations, we have to have a conversation about us culturally socializing young women to hypersexualize themselves to get ahead. Because you put yourself in dangerous situations trying to chase the bag. And this is really not a conversation about who's right and who's wrong. Because in my very honest opinion, I think Cassie has her level of culpability and was on degenerate behavior, because you also can't ask for this level of equality when it comes to accountability because you actively participated and then also try to absolve yourself. And again, I don't think most people are saying Diddy is wrong and that they don't agree that he should probably be in jail. But for what has been articulated as it relates to freak offs in that specific bucket, we have to talk about people, largely women, using sex to try to get ahead. Because in our community, it is a thing. I remember having a conversation with an older woman, and it was probably one of the only times that I've ever lost my composure in a community meeting, because the conversation was about pussy being power. Me personally, is there power in pussy? Yes. But I lost my composure because I called her a stupid MFer. Because you have young women, little girls, who are also in the vicinity of this conversation being had. Because now we're not talking about pussy being power, we're talking about the misuse of your body to try to circumvent hustle culture. We have situations where women have groomed their daughters to mess with adult men so that they can get additional money on SNAP benefits, WIC, etc., because the production of a baby. So we have to talk about and have a very honest conversation about the transition of what it means to be groomed. Because is there some truth in Cassie being groomed by Diddy? Absolutely. But prior to that, society has a culture, unfortunately, that grooms and teaches young women to use their bodies as a catapult to land a rich guy or a wealthy guy without any wherewithal to what quality of man this is. Because even if I go back to college, for example, again, there are a number of examples that I've experienced personally, because even in trying to tell a younger woman sometimes that you don't want to do that, the pushback is, I can do what I want, which is fine. But there's also this culture of, if I tell y'all about the trash dudes over here in the corner who doing illicit things to gain access to your body, or because they are or have and deemed to have access, clout, stature, and again, I'm talking about on a college campus, you go for that. Because now I'm just a hater. Perfectly fine with that. I'm gonna step to the side. Because there are times, and again, I'm gonna get to the names in the industry where people have warned us about them, and because they have clout and access, we have continued to prop them up. And then when it comes out that these people are demons, we wanna act surprised. For as foul as R. Kelly was, the full conversation of that, why were parents, or why did they think it was okay to give their children over to a known predator for the access and possibility of fame? Hustle culture, chasing the bag, and using your children as meal tickets is all problematic. So we also have to get into the habit of empowering those who come out and tell us about people instead of just saying, oh, well, they're haters. Because if you look back at my catalog on YouTube, let's take it away from sexual activity. I talked about Elon Musk and the problem that he is in terms of his ideology. When he was a Democrat, when he was still voting Democrat, when he was getting Democrat subsidies through that political apparatus, I was called a hater. But now people want to complain about Elon Musk because he used the very thing that you all have been conditioned to do, which is chase access, chase money, and chase power through the lens of meritocracy, which does not exist in the same way for Black people that it exists for other communities. And please do not confuse what I'm saying as do not try to better yourself, do not strive to be the best you can be, but understand that we live in a society that has restraints. And because those restraints were never addressed for our community specifically, we see a regime, and this is why all of this matters politically, we see a regime now who is perpetuating those restraints onto other communities. That level of indifference is now exceeding and moving past just Black folk and is becoming normalized for everybody. So, I'm gonna go ahead, bring in, man. Yo,
Yo,
so
what's good, man?
Quan, as you heard, um, right now I'm talking about Cassie and Diddy as an avatar for how our community unfortunately perpetuates a lot of toxic behavior and how we celebrate a lot of toxic behavior. Because we've had conversations before as it relates to even a generation of people who were propped up, who made their money off of selling drugs and tearing down the community. And we've had the conversation about how that's twofold and how we understand that the lack of opportunity and being locked out of the economic boom pushed Black men to make certain decisions, but still, as a result, you have to deal with the carnage of the decision that was made. So as it relates currently to Cassie, Diddy, or you can take it to Tyler Perry, because I'm going to bring in a few different names. Even when we look at people like Tariq Nasheed or a person like, what's the gentleman's name who's been trying to build the school for 30 years?
Umar?
Umar
Umar?
Johnson.
Not 30 years.
Yeah, I know. But my point is that we have a lot of people who do this thing where they'll tell people what they want to hear while fleecing our community or perpetuating scamming behavior that isn't necessarily good for our behavior. So what's your take on it, man? You know?
Um, when I look at a lot of this stuff, man, I look at it from like, I'm really focused on the structural aspects of these conversations because the players always change, but the structures remain the same. And one of the structures that we have to begin to admit to that always existed in our community is the fact that the strip club has become a pillar of the black community. Let me explain why. When you look at who has gotten propped up in terms of the beauty standards in women, strip club culture has profoundly impacted that and how women perceive beauty and how women operate in a sense because those are the people, the women who've gotten rewarded
So
all
would
of
you
our
say
life.
would you say street culture in general unfortunately has been propped up?
I would say yes, but but if we framing this, because I'm framing it, if we
Okay.
framing it as part of a Cassie Diddy situation, structurally, I'm gonna say strip club culture has heavily influenced how women operate, and pimp culture,
Put your face.
which is also a pillar of the black community, has heavily influenced how people like Diddy and how men operate. Because you have these two dynamics where one is always trying to take advantage or finesse the other. And that's always been the case in our community. You have one scrupulous structure which has elevated um women and their perception of what womanhood is, and you have pimp culture which has always finessed and sort of been the structural what we have as men have always strove to be. And it's those two structures and institutions that I would say we perpetuate, that I see it play in a lot of these things that we're going through in terms of, especially when you talk gender wars. All of that is pimp and hoe culture, stripper, it's that aspect of our community that we have never really addressed directly because we lean into it in order to get the clout, in order to get, people on our side. And now it's biting us in the behind because all we know is pimp and strip club culture.
Hold on. I want to stop you for one quick second because you just hit something on the head that I wanted to touch on. And the fact that you talked about we lean into it. And that's why I wanted to bring the other names into it because we lean into it. And I think that's the part that a lot of people miss. We lean into it for the access and the clout, right? For
Hmm.
example, we got Bel Air. We got all this flossy, glossy culture, and we bag chasing. But let's take a dude like Tariq Nasheed, right? Tariq Nasheed has a huge platform, but Tariq Nasheed came out. He has been Pan African. Now he's calling everybody tethers who don't agree with him. And he has went as far as to call the same group of women who support him bed wenches for pretty much nothing. But what I want to talk about in that leaning in space is a lot of people are still going to prop up and give big ups to a Tariq Nasheed because you can possibly align yourself with him and get some followers and get some clout and get some likes. You got a person like, hold, let me see, Tyler Perry, right? Tyler Perry had
Hmm.
the whole issue play out with Monique. Unfortunately, she had to record this man And the interesting part about it is we still support Tyler Perry even after hearing how unscrupulous he is from a number of different people, and the fact that he traffics in the most depraved, toxic representations of black life. Because, yes, the things that he put in his movies exist, but they are grossly exaggerated, especially when we talk about to the extent of. But again, Tyler Perry knows his audience. He panders
Mm-hmm.
and sells to people who love it. Umar Johnson. I mentioned him. Why? Because Umar Johnson says everything perfect to black women, right? But why is it okay that he has been taking donations and we still support this man for a school that has not been built? I'm not saying he is a bad person in your personal life or whatever, but we have to get to a space where we can critique people and have a conversation and not view that as outright hatred, and empower people who are willing to say the truth and not isolate because, to Quan's point, you still want the access, you still want the likes, you still want the clicks. So instead of propping up the person who's doing the right thing, y'all love the Cat Williams interview. It's all cool, it's all fun. But when stuff start coming out, it's, oh man, that's so crazy. We've been told this. But you
Yeah.
didn't want to necessarily listen to it or take heed to it because the person got access. Because unfortunately, whether it be Diddy or even if you talk about Trump, everybody loved this dude. Everybody was
Yeah.
geeking to get in the photos with him. Everybody was all around him. He was America's playboy. And
Yeah.
only until he had the power to make decisions that weren't in your favor, now it's cool to not like him. But the damage has already been done. Because you aren't
Yeah.
going to tell me that people didn't know who this man was. But you all made it okay. And unfortunately, the grab him by the pussy comment, as absurd as people may think it is, the truth in it is that entertainers, stars, and men with access, women will let you grab them by the pussy. I don't
And and
understand why
and
that's such a far fetched idea. You
yeah,
had the
and the
woman on the
piggyback.
concert, huh?
I was gonna say, and the piggyback on what you saying. Seeing we getting to a point where there's no reward for anyone who's choosing to live life righteously, and that's really what the crux of the issue is in America. Period. Everybody's finally learning what I've been saying for years, and that's crime pays. We're in that era now. I was saying we were getting to that point. We are now at the point where I'm just gonna flat out say crime pays because that's all we've rewarded. Like if you look throughout your life, saying who in your community would you say have been rewarded the most? Was it the people who chose to make good decisions, or was it the people who constantly
Pull your camera back.
berated people? Oh, berated people, constantly, made mistakes. Like everybody who's trying to do the right thing, they get the least support. Nobody thinks about them. Nobody checks up on them. It's we've always focused solely on the people who perpetrate the most atrocities, and crime has finally paid. It's finally got to that point where if you're not doing something semi illegal, you don't get any traction or
You
you
know
don't get
what?
any support.
You're right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring in this clip. I'm gonna bring in this clip. Hold on. Now listen to what he's saying, people. He is saying that the records that were made and pushed are made by committee. Now, going back to the Diddy conversation, which I also need to be paying attention to in that discussion, in this case, is all of the other names who are being mentioned from the top to the bottom, to the ones who was raping Diddy and everybody else. Because it's a network. What Ice Cube is talking about is soft despotism. Because everybody wants to say, well, ain't nobody making y'all do nothing and blah, 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 blah. No, there is a such thing as social engineering. There's a such thing as social curation. It's the same thing as if you were to curate an event and you pick your guests and you pick your hosts and you want to create that environment. It's the same situation for a community. It's the same situation for a nation. When you push certain isms, when you push certain ideology and it stick, it takes on a life of its own. So, continue. Former CIA agent. And again, for all of my people who want to say it's conspiracy theory, a lot of this stuff has already been proven, especially even when we go back to the crack cocaine boom in America and how the CIA had everything to also do with that, especially how it was redirected to black communities to create an explosion within a community. Now, what's being said? you have government, which again, you can go on the CIA's website. They have a whole, it's a known fact, they have a whole section for being able to, for Hollywood, I guess writers or directors or whoever, you can reach out to them and get guidance. But to this point, he said, look, the mission and the goal is to create debauchery, is to create these crime rings, is to create an environment that is explosive. Because not only are we damning your little girls, we're damning your young men. And they feeding off of each other. All in an effort to quote unquote make it the good life.
Yo, Devon, I gotta
Yo,
hop off. Great show. I'm gonna be in the background.
all right,
All right,
enjoy. Thank you, my guy.
no problem.
But we got a situation now where people are chasing this lifestyle, and you have, let's say, people, guys like Kanye West, right? Kanye West participates in a lot of degenerate behavior. But when you listen to Kanye West talk, and when you listen to a lot of these guys talk, and a lot of these people within the industry, they name drop a lot. And they name drop, and not only do they name drop, they talk about the different things that they've had to do to get to where they wanted to be. And a lot of the stuff, the background stuff, is degenerate. But our community, what I'm tired of is people saying, oh, well, he had to do what he had to do. No, that produces carnage on the back end. Because for every person who we say, oh, they had to do what they had to do, we're not thinking about the mothers who was on crack. We're not thinking about the little kids who went hungry with no parents. We're not thinking about all of the girls who then sat on the casting couch, because that's a thing. It might not be. Maybe the umpteen people who come out and told us that these things are real might be lying. But for somebody watching, they might be like, why does that even matter? What does that account for? Especially in the realm of politics or society. Because you have a space where people are being taken advantage of from top to bottom. Because as much as we don't want to say it, Diddy is also a victim of institutional protocol. And institutional protocol is, this is how we do things. Because everybody loves to say, well, this is how we do things and this is how we get down. So we got a culture of breeding demons. And like Quan was saying, we reward the bad behavior. And so now everybody's like, oh, why are girls operating the way they operating? Because for so long, we tell them that they do no wrong. For so long, we say, all right, go do whatever you want to do. And for all of the men who do say, no, that's problematic. Because another example is this Miss Shirley young lady who's like not even a young lady, a baby. I don't even want to do that. But the discourse that I've been seeing is Miss Shirley. Hold on, before I go into another rant, can y'all like and share the video? Because this goes back to what I was saying initially. When it comes to, if we're going to have a conversation about grooming, it comes from soon as these young black kids are dropping out the womb and they're being set up to be exploited, whether it be in corporations or whether it be in these racketeering rinks that we call record labels. Because Cash Money, same way. All of these people lie, cheat, steal. This person suing this person suing that person. Everybody broke. Everybody slutting each other out. But we still want to put them on a flyer and invite them because I'm not going to say nothing bad about them because I still want to have some access. I still want to be able to come up. I still want to be able to get likes. I still want to be able to take a picture with this person. Part of the problem. Now, this Miss Shirley situation. This girl is like 3. Slim. Y'all have to understand that things can be age appropriate. That is a fact. You have a young girl out here in leggings, popping her leg, doing sexually explicit dances. And what I'm seeing in the discourse is, well, you shouldn't have creeps or why are they looking or blah, blah, blah. As a grown man, I'm going to tell you, look, I don't like the fact that there are creeps in the world. But I also have to acknowledge that there are creeps in the world. And I also have to acknowledge and prepare the people that I love to not be victims of said creeps. It is not appropriate to have your daughter popping her coochie, talking as if she were a grown adult, so that you can come up off of her. Because again, this would even be a completely different discussion if we were talking about a young girl who was old enough to be making her own decisions and those decisions were just bad decisions. That's one conversation. But we're talking about a person, a little person, that's being guided to do these things, guided to say these words, guided to have this level of adult sass. It's not appropriate. That's grooming. Because that same little girl can potentially, through her thinking, if her mother is telling her, oh, P is power, she will be in a position where she is vulnerable. And you can't and want to push back on a person like myself who's saying, no, that's wrong or out of line. You need to mind your business. Cool. You know what? What a lot of people, especially men, have relegated themselves to doing is saying, cool, y'all got it. If you want to get hit by the bus, get hit by the bus. But don't expect me to clean it up and don't expect me to lick your wounds. Because I'm telling you that that's problematic. And why does that matter? If you go back to the first video that I did and I talk about the incentives, the question that was asked from Ms. Fu at the candidates forum. How do we get to a space where we are empowering people who are doing the correct thing? As Quan said, unfortunately, crime pays. Degenerate behavior pays. Because for everybody, like I said, who want to hate a Diddy, a Trump, Tyler Perry, etc., all people have been warned. From a number of people have been evidenced And because a lot of people want likes and access to the money or the possibility of fame, power, and status to get invited to a Met Gala, we have resigned ourselves to self-censorship, but want to cry about a democracy that we think is deteriorating. But you won't even speak out, or you won't even support a person who's speaking out because you don't want to be seen as confrontational. You don't want to be seen as radical. So we've relegated ourselves to just, oh, let me get the bag. And again, Meritocracy Trap, good book. Because a lot of people believe in meritocracy. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with wanting to do good and better. But how you do and how you get your money matters. Because there is wreckage that you leave behind depending on how you do it. Now, it says here, hold on, I'm gonna go to this page first. This is page 59. The empowered elite, when it created superordinate workers, meritocracy gave the elite a tool specifically built to render itself effectively ungovernable. When it created superordinate workers, meritocracy gave the elite a tool specifically built to render itself effectively ungovernable. What do they mean by that? So you have superordinate workers, workers who are going to go above and beyond, work 80 hours, 80, 90, however many they ask, through the idea that if I work these 120 hours, I'm going to make it. Or if I sell my body, I'm going to make it. I'm going to come up. I'm going to do all of these flips and hurdles, and I'm going to somehow make it. But right after, meritocracy gave the elite a tool specifically built to render itself the elite. That's what we're talking about. Effectively ungovernable. People ask, how are we in this situation? How are we in this predicament? Because going back to the original point, the Cassie, the Elon Musk, the Donald Trumps, all of these people who have and had social capital and clout, we have aligned ourselves with them to try to make it. We won't speak out against their degenerate behavior because we too have the possibility of making it. I'm not going to call out Donna Brazile because I might want to get into this committee spot. I'm not going to call out Mitch McConnell because I might want to get out into this committee spot. Or I don't want to talk bad about this company because I want this brand deal. So I'm going to effectively self-censor. And the self-censorship is wrapped in meritocracy. Because I think by censoring myself that I'm going to get ahead. But guess what? It itself effectively makes itself ungovernable, unmanageable, uncontendable. Because not only are you dealing with a class of people who are willing to exploit every part of the supply chain, I'm going to exploit the human capital as well. Finally, meritocracy once again places the state and private elites into direct competition for the same basic asset. Now the human capital of superordinate workers, and for the same basic virtues, which is now skill, effort, and industry. Now listen to that again. Finally, meritocracy once again places the state and private elites. This is not a conversation about all white people, all black people. This is a conversation about, as Ice Cube put it, committees of people who push narrative to create dissension or black fatigue. Because Bad Girls Club, all of these shows, World Star Hip Hop, all of this stuff is reproduced and backed by elites. And are a lot of those elites white? Yeah, but they're not all white. Don't think that your black brethren won't sell you out. But again, this shit is in books, man. Meritocracy. Meritocracy trap. All right. Rising income, I'm on page 85. Rising income inequality coincides with rising inequality in labor and mirror image trend and leisure. What does that mean? Rising income inequality coincides with rising inequality in labor and mirror image trend and leisure. This is where I beef with the gig economy. Because as wages dropping through inflation, through stagnation, through, I forget the word. But basically, there are a certain number of measures where wages are undermined, and that's through immigration and also prison labor, etc. So it's being devalued in every way, extrinsically and intrinsically. But you got the rising inequality in labor. So you got motherfuckers working 1 million hours, and they're not even getting the appropriate benefits for working those hours because y'all wanted to be close to y'all faith, Obama, Black Jesus, when he gutted labor laws through the invention of the gig economy. And now we are selling entrepreneurship through the gig economy. Because in modern entrepreneurship, it's completely different than what you're talking about. And again, get the book. When you're talking about magnates and robber barons, who are the Carnegies, the Zuckerbergs, and all of these different people. And again, this is not me saying don't try to better yourself or none of that. I'm just trying to, part of this thing is awareness. If you understand what people are doing to you, you have a way to fight it and push back. Now, the increase in long work hours has been concentrated among highly paid and highly educated workers, and the increase in leisure among low paid and less educated workers. That's why we're starting to have conversations about universal basic income. Now, the match between high weekly earnings and long weekly hours was closer in 2000 to 2002 than in 1983 to 85. The rich, that is, disproportionately work the long hours, and the rest disproportionately work the short ones. Inserting a scene. Matters look very different today. Economic inequality now threatens to divide America against itself. Very clear cut. We see it happening. Economic inequality now threatens to divide America against itself. Inequality threatens, in other words, to break the mechanics or mechanisms through which American capitalism once sustained social solidarity and instead transformed America into a caste society. No longer are the days where you're working to transcend class. We are no longer in that era. And that's what I want people to understand. So when we look at a Cassie and a Diddy situation, or we look at a Tyler Perry situation, or we look at all of these people who exploit Black poverty through sex, drugs, money, access, we're looking at the current business model of what it means to be an entrepreneur. Young Thug just got caught up on the same thing. Because a lot of people have always used record labels, even if we look at Death Row, as racketeering devices. But again, we won't support people who call out institutions or individual people because we want to slightly have access to those people. Because we might get there one day. And that is going to fuck us over. It is. I know people don't like hearing it because you have to find balance in yourself in other ways. And let me say this. Let me go into this. This is a little bit off topic, but it's real personal to me. You ever, for all my people who got a good life on paper, you got the numbers, you got the salary, you got the apartment, you got the car, you got the everything you were supposed to have, right? But something off with your spirit, something off with like, I just still feel empty. A part of me, there's a super huge void. And it's because of this. We chasing something that don't exist. And we have now been trained to be willing to use our bodies or self-censor and allow ourselves to be exploited. Again, and is there certain levels of exploitation that happens within capitalism? Yes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we've gotten to the point where you can't speak out against somebody in government without a case being brought up on you, you being thrown in jail, and now they talking about people even being deported. Whoever thought we'd have been here? It was a slow walk. And what I'm suggesting is we can't do that. We have to empower the people who are willing to say, you know what, nah, this shit wild. You wild. Because the more people who retreat back into, I ain't gonna say nothing, we eventually create more space for the degenerate people to come in and fleece us. Because that is what's happening. They have gotten stronger through self-censorship. You can't even say certain words on social media, like how you gonna have a conversation about a life cycle, but you can't say dead or death and stuff like that. You gotta use words like unalived. Understand that is problematic. Understanding when your speech is being heavily curated, the narrative is being shaped so that one party can continue to maintain leverage. And to say, oh, well, I'm gonna stay silent out of strategy is not a strategy. It's not. Not at this day and time. If y'all still here with me, like the video, share the video. I appreciate you for coming in, joining us again. Meritocracy Trap. If you want to check it out yourself, please do. It's a good read. Next, I'm gonna go here. You will own nothing. Cause we are in a space where people who we thought had the money don't got the money. A few videos ago, I talked about Taraji P. Henson being on TV crying about not being able to make it and not being able to thrive. When these are the very type people who we thought was success. People would have gave up their lives. People would have gave up everything to get to this space. You want to get a trip to the Met Gala. You want to be around the Diddies. They would want to cut the grass doing my goddamn thing. Try to do it early. But no worries. So, again, this is You Will Own Nothing. And the biggest concept of this book is talking about how everything has become a subscription, how we don't necessarily have the ability to own products anymore, and how we've been put in this space or being put in this space because it hasn't been locked in yet, where you can buy a car and you gotta buy like the extra acceleration or subscribe to the extra acceleration, or you gotta Apple Music. Basically, there are opportunities to actually own. Like even me doing this, I'm on YouTube. I own it, but I don't. And so, let me see. Okay. Socially unacceptable, the business edition. It says, so ESG, and those are the new standards that they use for environmental social grades, make general sense. However, once they have been co-opted by a profiteer class and enabled by useful idiots, the free market concepts become bastardized and guided to central planning outcomes. What does that mean? So I've been talking about monetization, the problem with monetization, and how we've monetized every aspect of our life, including our sexuality, including access, The whole spectrum is monetized. Even therapy has been monetized. So trauma and all of this type of stuff, you monetize it. The problem with that is if you don't interrogate the monetization process itself, you enable what it says is useful idiots, and the free market concepts become bastardized and guided to central planning outcomes. What the fuck does that mean, Devon? And why does that have anything to do with Cassie, Diddy, and any of this? All right. So first off, let me say this. We do not live in a free market the way free markets or laissez-faire typically operates. Government creates winners and losers. Policy dictates who gets what and how those resources are distributed. It is not the spoils always go to the best, the brightest, and the most what? Cunning. Absolutely not. The central planning outcomes piece is where you take what it's meaning by these useful idiots, people who I say, or when I say, you don't understand the carnage in which your behavior leaves behind. So when you, let's say, again, we talked about crack cocaine in the 80s. Everybody like, I gotta get my bag. I gotta get my bag. Fuck it, the bag, the money. If it ain't about money, it don't make sense. What the fuck? You don't understand in the process of making that money, because politics is about collectivism, you have destroyed a whole community behind you in the pursuit of your dollar. And so when you take that and scale it up to my last video, I talked about the problem with the communications industry with news and media. Because news and media has also been co-opted by free markets, right? The problem with this is that some of them are useful idiots, because they'll say, well, this is the way we do it. This is how we do it. Institutional protocol, right? Not understanding, therefore, every time you double down on making a 60-second video or a 2-minute video because that's what sells and because that's what people are and because that's how people consume content, you entrench that even further. So let's take it a step further. If negativity sells, I'm a useful idiot, because now this is how it is. I'm gonna get trained by the person above me, right? I don't even understand why I'm doing it, but this is just the way that the company operates. This is how we get the results. So we have a centralized process, and you'll hear, this is how it'll come out in like an interview or something. You're not a cultural fit. What that means is you're not with the bullshit. We need somebody who will go along to get along. Because guess what? I need you to just sell the negativity blindly, because that's what the bottom line gets us to. But you're not paying attention to the fact that every time you sell a negative story, you are perpetuating an ideology. And I'm not going to go on to like the whole spiritual level and all of that, but you are perpetuating a whole level of evil spiritedness for $1. So yeah, you got your bag, I'm gonna get to my bag. But now we're dealing with a country, a nation whose literacy rates are plummeting fast, who get brain rot from just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, who can't consume anything past a certain point because we have a business model that has been centralized, and we're going to say, oh, you know what? Nah, this is just what we do. That's what that, again. However, once they have been co-opted by your profiteer class and enabled by useful idiots, the free market concepts become bastardized and guided to central planning outcomes. And to read even further, as we have learned throughout history and paid the price for in recent years, this is never anyone's benefit other than the central planners and their cronies. Again, y'all don't gotta listen to me. It's cool to say, oh yeah, Diddy fucked up. This fucked up. That's fucked up. But guess what? It's a lot of people, if they could go in that room and get access to that bag, they ain't gonna say shit. They're gonna become one of the cronies. Even when we talk about the left flank of the Democratic Party, a lot of them assholes. You wanna know why? Because they suffer from this very concept. They're useful idiots. Because let me be 100 with y'all. Next time I'm gonna bring up my DNC card just because I don't think y'all understand. I do this shit. You gotta run some of what you're gonna do through the appropriate power channels. So let's say I want to do this video and I want to critique this and I want to critique that and I want to have a conversation about this or that. If I'm a person like AOC, I got to call up a collaborator and I got to call up a Biden or this or that to get permission to do it. You're not no fucking revolutionary. Cut it out. That's how Kamala got hemmed up. Because you got a person, and this is, again, when I stepped away from Joe Biden, everybody criticized. DC wouldn't be going through what it's going through right now in terms of having statehood if Joe Biden would have stood on his word. But y'all chose Joe Biden. Y'all didn't choose the people who said, yo, this dude is a liar. His track record is lying. But nah. And what did he do to Kamala? And again, I'm not here to say whether Kamala is competent or not or how you feel about Kamala. That's not what this conversation is about. What happened was, and this came out, I may be wrong, they may be lying. Joe Biden said, don't undercut me. But meanwhile, you undercutting her. So as she remaining loyal to him, fucking up her campaign because she got to run it through the ranks. Because that's what the social capital is. That's what the access is. That's what the self-censorship is. Through your own self-censorship, you fucked yourself. For a man who don't care about you. Don't care about us. I'll wait. And then you got the left, who's just control opposition. They do all of that talking now, but when the actual party who could do something about it was in office, they did nothing. Said nothing. Yeah, it's cool to talk now because you know Donald Trump ain't gonna move on none of that shit. So it's just, again, I'm monetizing the oligarchy tour. Oligarchy tour? You know how many oligarchs in the Democratic Party? You know how many wealthy motherfuckers in the Democratic Party who just got bags and bags to throw around? which is why people don't be really willing to speak their voice and how they really truly feel, to the point where Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush gotta wait until they get out of the Democratic Party to talk about the wild shit that happened to them in the Democratic Party. Because they censored themselves because they wanted access to try to monetize their life because they thought meritocracy was a thing. So they were selling their own integrity, selling their own dignity, selling all of those things to get along. And it's a little bit different because I ain't talking about the average people who got like regular jobs. When you elected official, you can kind of drop your nuts a little bit because you elected by the people. It's not the same for them. I can be ideologically free. And for who those don't like it, just don't like it. I ain't talking about all my workers who got a boss. I understand y'all. I get it. You gotta get your money. We everyday people. I'm talking about the elite and the people who serve the elite. And then the people who serve want to fake come out and cry about the elite. You doing an oligarchy tour, but you serve the oligarchs. You can't make this shit up. Stop it, people. What are we doing? We monetizing every facet of our life in the hopes that we'll somehow stave off and become the millionaires that we hate. A lot of people are turning conservative with not shit to conserve. If you wealthy, I get it. I understand. I don't agree, but I understand. But for all of those who don't got shit to conserve, what you holding off? You think you're gonna make it one day? No. Again, if I had to recommend one of these specifically, I would definitely say meritocracy try it first. This right here. And then because it's a lot of stuff that go into these conversations. I could probably talk for like 20 hours straight for real. Because the black fatigue thing, I'm just really tired of us having very superficial, simplistic conversations, and then the black elite, the bourgeoisie, coming in as if they don't profit off the debauchery, off the black poverty. Like, to all the women, right? Y'all don't find this shit weird? And I'm talking to my black women. They prop up the ghetto girl shit. But if you ever went into a job or try to get ahead doing that, they're gonna shun you. And it's the same thing with the degenerate culture on the male side. And that's why I brought the Ice Cube clip in, because all of this is propagated by institutions who have a bottom line. And I make a point to say institutions and not white people, because I do understand racial hierarchy, but I think we've gotten to a point where people don't understand nuance, because people will talk about white people all day, every day, which again, they do have some accountability to hold. But then you use them as the measuring stick as to what you should and should not be able to do when you call them degenerate. It don't make sense. And y'all also missed the point that a lot of white people, the reason why race is such a frustrating conversation, and I'm gonna wrap this up because I done gone on for a real long time, is because They don't even understand it. Because in this current moment, like we talked about in both of these books, it's not about intentionality at this point. You don't have to be intentional. It's called institutional protocol. These are the way that things are done. And they produce the outcomes that they have been set to produce to keep everything moving in a cyclical fashion. What the fuck do I mean by that before I leave? Let's take gentrification, for example, right? Gentrification is undergirded by racist infrastructure. But gentrification, as it currently happens, is not individual white people intentionally being racist. Why you capping for white people, Devon? I'm not. But think about it like this. We got the uber wealthy that we talk about in here, the ungovernables. Then you got your upper middle class white people. Then you got your middle class white people. And then you got your lower tier. Now, because America has been set up the way that it has been set up, in terms of how blackness itself attached to a community devalues property. Because the associated narratives that have been entrenched through, again, racist infrastructure. These white people now, though, because wealth is calcifying at an unprecedented level, are saying, shit, I can't live around my boss. Their bag too big and it's getting bigger. So I gotta move because their bag is creating a bubble around where they living. Now I'm gonna move to this community. But because black and white wealth is so disparate, when white people move into that community to survive, they now raise everything up, intrinsically and extrinsically. Because we also got some black Negroes who like gentrification because they want that whiteness. They want the access. They want the juxtaposition. Those are conversations that we gotta have. But it's not intentional. A lot of them don't even know what's happening. It's an economic phenomenon. Again, when you look at white flight, when you look at black flight, when you look at all of these things that have taken place in the past, or color law, covenants, redlining, eminent domain, all of these different things created a system that now has a cyclical effect. So every time we get to a certain point and we get to a certain place, it's going to happen. That's why you can't outrun it. Because the more wealth calcifies, and I've talked about this in depth in other videos that I've done in the past. The more wealth calcifies, the more poverty expands. But because white poverty and black poverty is not the same thing, we get displaced. That's what's happening. But because our founding thugs, AKA fathers, the racists are the most racist, set up a system that their kids don't even understand. Because again, our literacy rates are completely in the toilet. So a lot of people can't comprehend how complex the social issues are. But we get up here and we talk about fucking black fatigue. No. How about you call up the media companies who keep perpetuating it or promoting it? How about when a person is known as a known degenerate We don't keep supporting them because you want likes and access, or you want to invite them to an event and you don't want to get socially isolated from that opportunity. Let's actually say, you know what? Let's stand with people who actually have a level of integrity and dignity and build something where we can be ideologically aligned and not just black together. Because it's some black people who think some wild, degenerate shit. But we support them. Again, thank y'all. I might do a whole book. But until then, like the video, please share it. Because again, I'm just here to try to hack the algorithm so that we can actually have more substantive conversations. And call people out. Because one last thing, and I know I said it already, but fuck it. It's right here. All of this whole, we can't be confrontational and blah, blah, blah. We ain't gonna get nowhere if we're not willing to be confrontational. And yes, that means with our own people too. We have to do it. You can't think that you're gonna get politically advanced and be like, oh yeah, we just not going to have any type of confrontation. Politics is inherently confrontational. If you want your ideology represented, you got to go with it. You got to take the risk. That's what these motherfuckers did. But we got to get out of that mindset too. Oh, we got to stick together. Yeah, stick together to what extent though? To the point we got heathens up at the top running whole sex rinks. You got people calling y'all bad wenches, scamming y'all for schools that have been trying to be built for 30 years. And I'm not supposed to say nothing. Y'all supposed to just keep donating. We supposed to just keep saying, oh, we can't say nothing because he black. What? We got to get out of that. They a problem to the community. Now, if he doing something that's a detriment to himself, cool. Have at it. But these people fleecing the community. And all this pimp hoe culture, stop it. Stop monetizing every aspect of your life, man. Stop being overly transactional. Read. Because if you understood a lot of this stuff that people talking about, y'all putting yourself in the harm's way. But because can't nobody tell you shit, you just gonna keep doing what you want to do and then want somebody to boo-hoo with you. That's why you don't hear me cry about none of my past nothing. Because I brought that shit on myself in most cases. Only thing you will hear me complain about is this wild ass post-crack cocaine where we got sold by our parents. And then they wonder why we degenerate. Motherfucker, y'all left us. And y'all was degenerates. Fuck. But y'all be safe. I appreciate you. Go watch the whole full video, man. You know how my conversations are. I don't really like having these quick, superficial jumps. I'm trying to get it down shorter because everybody's like, oh, you got to make it shorter, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of this shit take time, man, to understand it. If I ain't spent 4 years just being able to sit in a room and consume a lot of shit and then get paid in my actual profession to consume a lot of shit, I'd probably be behind too. But what I'm telling you is, Slim, you gotta take the time. Because these people gonna tell you what you wanna hear, and a motherfucker that's gonna tell you what you wanna hear don't love you. Straight up. Correction is love, man. Sometimes I wish I had more correction in my life. But fuck it, that's what accountability is for. Self-correction. But y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Sunday. I ain't gonna hold y'all up. Hope church was good. For all my people who rolling out, enjoy. It's a nice day. If you in Washington, D.C., man, go to a community meeting. Go to a town hall. Start there. It's always simple starts. Engage. Because just sitting around, calling the mayor a bald-headed bitch ain't gonna do nothing. Or whoever your representative is. Or calling Trump Cheeto Man. You don't give a fuck. Do something. But I love y'all. I say this all this shit within love. I really do. Love you guys. Be safe.